Discuss the findings of this report is Neil Hetherington. He's the CEO of the Daily Bread Food Bank. Neil, good morning. Thank you so much for being with us. So 1 in 5 Canadians, 20% of us, know someone who has used a food bank. What do you make of that number? Does that sort of jive with your understanding of how many people are making a trip to the food bank?
Yeah, that number absolutely does correspond to what we're seeing here on the ground here in Toronto and really across the country. We know that this past March, there were some 2 million Canadians who went to food banks. And the numbers are also, I guess, indicative of how individuals are using food banks across the country where they need them and where government supports are assisting. So, for example, in Quebec, we saw the lowest numbers in this last report, and in the Atlantic provinces, the highest numbers. That's where 1 in 3 Atlantic province individuals are currently food insecure.
What struck me, and I'm wondering if I can get your thoughts on it, 2% say that they had been to a food bank, but they know someone who has. And I'm wondering about, the honesty around that, if there is still a shame associated with needing to go to a food bank to get food for yourself or for your family, Neil.
Yeah, I think that number certainly is a little underreported. We know here in Toronto, 1 in 10 Torontonians has made use of a food bank this past year. And so, yes, there is a bit of a sense of concern and perhaps a loss of dignity that somebody might feel if they have to make use of food charity through no fault of their own because of rising affordable housing costs, because of challenges associated with a lack of income, particularly for those on disability. But that's where the food banks have really, I think, progressed. And you're seeing images of new food banks like in Regina, who have just opened up their doors to a new sort of grocery shopping model, similar to what we're doing here in Toronto. There are ways that we are trying to make sure that it is low barrier so that those who are food insecure, which is 1 in 4 Canadians, have access to food in a more dignified way.
What's it been like trying to keep up with demand at the Daily Food Bank?
Well, it's been extraordinary. I mean, our food purchasing budget has gone from $1.5 million per year to $29 million beginning July 1st.
Wow.
You're completely dependent on charitable donations. We receive no government money, nor do we want it. And the reason we don't want government money, and food banks are similar across the country on this, is because it allows us to have an honest conversation with the premiers of the provinces across Canada and our prime minister to say, here's what's going on, and here are the policy alternatives, here are the policy solutions so that we can start to decrease the number of Canadians, 1 in 4, who are food insecure.
That is a staggering number, that budget of yours. Oh, my goodness.
It has been an extraordinary challenge for us to be able to meet that demand. But the heartening thing, and I do think we always, Marcia, need to turn to hope. The heartening thing is the community has risen to the occasion and they have said, listen, my neighbor is going hungry and I'm willing to provide food or funds to be able to make sure that that happens. The other thing that is changing is people are advocating more. They are writing letters to their government leaders. It doesn't matter of which party, of which province, they are saying the exact same thing. Today is the day to begin to reduce food insecurity and poverty across the country. Right now, the trend is negative, but we can turn that around.
And Neil, lastly, I want to ask you about the nutritional value of food that is at the food banks, because I think some people may think it's just going to be ultra-processed foods. What are you doing to meet that demand for food that is nutritious, good for our minds and our bodies?
That's a great question. I'm really glad you asked it. We've got about 65% of what is sent out is fresh food. It used to be, when food banks were started, back about 40 years ago, that it was a lot of cans, a lot of boxes of food, as you said, highly processed food. That's not the case anymore. What we are doing is farm to food bank. By and large, it is fresh and nutritious food that is sent out to the communities because those are the foods that we want to put on our own tables.
Neil, thanks again for taking the time to speak with us. It's always an important conversation. Neil Hetherington is the CEO of the Daily Bread Food Bank in Toronto.